Hey everybody, I'm on the line right now with Rob Van Dam on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. It's just after 4:30 my time. You have a new endorsement deal that we're going to be talking about. It's called Celebrity Slots app. How you doing today?
Yeah, doing excellent, man. Thank you for asking. I'm much better than a lot of people during these times and stuff. So let's not rub it in, but I got that waiting upstairs. You know what I mean?
I hear that for sure. So I know a little bit about the app. I know Ric Flair's on it. I talked to him not too long ago, and you just had your launch this week, and there's some pretty cool things that people can do with it where they can win different prizes. I know they were talking about signed memorabilia, shout-outs, different stuff.
You know, now that you remind me, I wonder if I have to kick my agent back something out of this. He brought it to me. Man. Anyway, this came through an old, I'm not saying he's old, but an agent who's a friend of mine that I used to work with in Hollywood way back in the 90s. But he contacted me and said, hey, I got a friend that's doing this thing. I think that you'd like to be a part of it. It's pretty cool. And then, you know, I learned about it, and it is really cool. And we spent a lot of time creating it because it's a phone app that's free to download, and you're playing a slot game, but you're playing the Rob Van Dam slot game, Money in the Bank. So we went through and RVD-tized it as much as we could, making all the symbols, things that are in RVD's life, creating new symbols, and the audio. You know, myself and Katie are doing a lot of sound effects and encouraging words, and you know, whatever, maybe some not so encouraging words, but it's her and I, our voices on there. So basically you get to hang out with us. And if you line up, I like things in three. So if you line up, I guess it's 3 across. I should check. It might be 5 across. I don't know. But anyway, we even have myself and Katie and Jennifer's image on a symbol to line up. And you know what? It's free to play. And then you win, like you said. I mean, we're always still working on the prizes. You know, right now, you know, you'll win a conversation with me like this and put it on my story. So hundreds of thousands of people see it or whatever, and whatever the fans think is cool. We'll always be adding to the prizes and switching things out to keep it current. Right now, the grand prize on RVD's Celebrity Slot game is a $500 gift card, so you can use that as you will.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And as you said, you pointed out a few of the details in the board, and it's very on brand. If you're an RVD fan, you'll recognize like the music is similar to some of your theme songs you've used. Katie's on there. It's very flashy, like Las Vegas. I know you live there now, right?
That is correct.
Are you a casino guy, or like do you have a favorite?
I actually am not what I would consider a casino guy. But when you go out in Vegas, when you go out in Las Vegas and you go to nightclubs or even sometimes to restaurants or meetings or whatever, you're often walking through casinos because the big hotels that have casinos also have the restaurants and the bars and nightclubs and all that in it too. So, so I'm not a stranger to walking through. I don't stop at the tables, you know, and you know, thank God they're not smoky anymore. But with RVD's slot machine, it's up to you if you smoke or not, and what you smoke. Wink, wink.
That leads me into...
I thought you were taking your glasses off to wink at me, dude.
Oh yeah.
That was awesome. Nice.
That leads me into my next question. You know, you've always been an advocate for marijuana. You have your own line of CBD products now, rvdcbd.com.
Yes.
Do you feel like wrestling is finally moving away from the stigma that marijuana is bad for performers. Just, watching Impact Wrestling right now where you perform. You have the Rascals on TV. They do the smoke circles. So it's more like, do you feel like it's more acceptable for behind the scenes instead of like just, they're poking fun at the storyline?
It's more acceptable everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, times have changed, and I've been on the forefront of it. I've been an advocate for legalizing cannabis since I learned the truths about it way back like in the mid 90s. And I was like, holy crap, everybody's got it wrong. Because back in the day, people would pot shame me for smoking, and then they'd be smoking cigarettes. And then here I was learning that even though the federal government says marijuana is the #1 Schedule 1 controlled substance, meaning the most dangerous, I was learning like nobody has ever died from smoking marijuana. You can't die from it. It's not even toxic enough. Whereas cigarettes kill 1 out of 2. 50% of long-term cigarette smokers die as a result from smoking a cigarette. So I felt obligated, I gotta tell people this. They gotta know. They gotta quit smoking cigarettes because all my friends are smoking cigarettes. And now it's like a downhill battle because of people like myself that have educated the world and spent a lot of time undoing the tanglement that was purposely put there. It was prohibited back in 36, and it was all based on lies. I don't know if you've seen the movie Reefer Madness, but Harry Anslinger, who was the head of the we didn't have DEA back then, it was called the FBN. He went around to schools with the Reefer Madness movie and used that to educate the parents on this new crazy drug that was making people violent, making them kill each other. What I learned was all that was silly. That cannabis doesn't make you crazy and violent. But also I learned that the reason they did that was all for money. It's a fascinating story about marijuana being prohibited because it could take up to 80% of, it could replace up to 80% of pharmaceutical sales. They don't want that. Alcohol and tobacco don't want it. It could replace fuel. It could replace oil. It's the most resourceful plant on our planet. And I knew that, and I felt like I need to help educate people. Now we're moving in that direction. It's been illegal to study the plant. So all we knew was that it got you high. Now we're learning, wow, you can separate the different cannabinoids. There's not just THC, there's CBD, which mimics a lot of the effects of THC, but without some of the drawbacks, if you consider that a drawback. You can choose if you don't want to have your attention span altered, for instance. And there's CBN and there's CBG, and we still only know a handful of the components to the plant, and there's over 100. So now we're starting to study it. We're learning so much about it. And yes, of course, I'm on the forefront of it with RVD CBD, and all the feedback I'm getting from everyone that's tried my product. They all tell me how much I'm helping their lives, how much they appreciate what I'm doing. And that's just great. I've never been part of any project that's had so much positive energy. Both that and my movie Headstrong, where I started talking about concussions. It was the feedback from that made me realize I wanted to pursue not just talking about concussions, but learning what can we do to help treat and prevent long-term concussion damage, which overall, if it's done in the right way, which I think it will be with some components of the plant, it will also help not just long-term concussion damage, but Alzheimer's, depression in general. And I have a very personal passion for this after losing many of my peers to opiate overdoses or suicide. Nowadays, which gets back to your question, nowadays a lot of the boys are smoking weed instead of eating a handful of somas and drinking a bunch of six-packs afterwards. They're going to live longer. And because they're all trying to be RVD and doing such an athletic style now, they have to take care of themselves more. They're legitimate athletes. Whereas when I got into the business, the guys were athletes, but I mean, they were 350-pound athletes. You know, I mean, there was a lot of guys that really didn't have to. It was a different style. You know, their feet weren't leaving the mat; they were hardly ever bumping, and there was room for guys that weren't that good. Now, if you're not good, you really don't last very long at all. Like the whole standard is up, and that also includes the standard of taking care of yourself so that you can work at a style like that. So basically, yes, RVD has added life to the expectancy of a pro wrestler. You're welcome.
I think it's really good to see like an overall culture change, and you know, being an advocate of marijuana use. And then there's other athletes, I believe you did some stem cell injections,
Yes,
bioaccelerator, so that, and
Yep.
DDP yoga gets a lot of press. Like all of these things are really good to see that back 20 years ago, you know, guys, and there's obviously there's nothing wrong with drinking if it's in moderation, but I hope you see less of these stories where guys are dying young because they're taking alternative approaches to take care of themselves. So
it's almost unheard of now, you know, and it's like such a relief. If you hear about somebody now taking their life, or, you know, whether intentionally or not, it's almost always someone that's been around, you know, like since the 90s at least. Like the new guys, it's really overall, it's more of a professional corporate kind of business, and that's for a lot of reasons, you know, not just what I've mentioned, but back when I got into it, you know, it was a closed door society. You know what I mean? It was the good old boys. They ran everything. They had their own omerta where nobody talks about what goes behind the doors, and they protected the business always 24 hours a day, definitely in the ring. Now none of that is a factor anymore, and so now, you know, we got equality, and we got, you know, no more homophobic slurs, no treating the women even, like all this stuff, which is probably for the best, but these are all turning the business into something that it never was meant to be originally. So, you know, we got to have patience. There's a lot of changes that are coming along, and it's also so much in so many more homes now than it used to be. So it affects a lot more of the majority, and they're talking about giving funds now for kids out of high school to go to pro wrestling schools. Like, that wasn't an option back when I was young. It's grown to be, like I said, more of a corporate, more of a profession, and a lot less of just a good old boy business where they could do whatever they wanted, and nobody was ever even going to find out. Yeah.
You've been with Impact Wrestling for about a year and a half now. They announced you signed a contract last April, and this past week you just wrestled Eddie Edwards. That aired on TV. I remember when you originally came back, you said it was really all about business in the ring. You had the dates you were going to work, and now it really looks like you're having a little more fun, like figuratively and literally. So now that you're moving into working more with Katie on screen, do you feel like, you know, what do you think changed where, like, are you allowing yourself to have more fun? Is it just getting to work with her, or what brought on this shift?
As you go through life, your perspective has to change because you're looking at the same thing from a different place. So your perspective has to change. I haven't changed a whole lot in my mindset, but you're right. You noticed I'm having more fun. A lot of it, most of it is, you know, working with Katie, and whereas I am tired and ready to go home, she's excited and ready to go out. You know, and there's a balance there that really works well together. But also, besides that direct factor of working with her, which is awesome. I mean, we tell each other all the time, it's so awesome being a couple at home and at work and not having to leave each other. And it's an appreciation of that, and an appreciation of Impact Wrestling. One, for how they take care of me. You know, I mean, obviously we made a deal I was pleased with on the business end, or I wouldn't have gone there, and I wouldn't still be there. But as far as like the schedule goes, those guys work a lot more than me. Sometimes there'll be 4 days, I'll work like 2 days, and then get sent home. And I'm not budgeted to work every day, and it works out well that way. But I just really appreciate that they go out of their way to see, to really know us. And so not only do I have a lighter schedule, and they have Katie, coming with me, traveling with me, I feel like they really do a lot, and I appreciate them. And they watch the social media, and they look at our posts, and then some of the storylines or vignettes are based off of our actual postings, like the whole hot tub thing. That was a real post that went crazy, and now they're writing it in, and it made me realize that they're really watching us to learn us, and that's a lot better than somewhere where you're really trying to fit a square into a circle hole, and you're having a hard time adjusting and fitting. What do they want? No, it's more about what are we, what we are, and showing that. So all that has to do with it, and I appreciate, the schedule is such that once a month I might have a two-day trip of taping. Maybe sometimes it's even longer. So I don't really have time to be burnt out anymore and really complain about being on the road. So I'm there for the moment. Don't know how long the moment will last, but being in the moment, you're right. The moment is more fun than it has been. And also, by the way, appreciating Impact for the other wrestlers and the other entertainment that it has to offer. There's a lot of guys there, and I'm just watching them, work their asses off, doing stuff that I used to do to such a style that's not even style of match that I'm even doing, without even me changing, just because of how much they've taken it, how much it's changed, and how much these guys are working together. There's a lot of good talent there. So I'm happy for them. And at the same time, I'd be happy to give them all my TV time, because that's how competitive I am now. I'm like, dude, whatever. It's a lot better. It's a lot better to look at life like that than, man, screw this guy, I'll kick his ass, which is how I felt up until probably just a couple of years ago.
Yeah. As far as the moment lasting longer, like how long are you still under contract with them?
We kind of are do it like by a handful of shows, So Scott said, hey, I got to think even what month it is, but hey, we got these tapings coming up in August, can you make it, boom, boom, boom. And what about these dates? So it's still like that. So we, boom, might be 2 shows ahead. And then at the end, you might say, hey, what about the next ones? So right now I'm kind of taking it one step at a time. And I don't have, even though I'm having fun and stuff, I would never allow myself to invest feelings into it to a point where I could be hurt emotionally or mentally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really got to learn to not give a. Can I swear on here?
Yep.
You have to learn what to give a fuck about in life. You know what I mean? And in this business, there's plenty of heartbreaks. There's plenty of promises that are made that are gonna not come through, and that's just part of it. How you adjust to that, is it depends on who you are, what your values are, and those are all factors on where you get. For me, I've always been upfront in saying I adjusted by not giving a fuck after a while. So when someone says something's going to happen, I believe it when it does happen. And so, I'm stoked that Impact thinks that I'm a worthy investment. Some people ask, like, dude, you're not even on the opening of the show. How could they have the biggest star there and not even have you? I don't know, but you know what? I don't give a fuck. They're paying me. So, so I'm doing my part, and I hope to see them go, and I know they are going to go places, but how they do it, regardless of if it's different than how I would do it or not, that's part of my adjustment to make it work.
You guys are doing tapings in Nashville. I think you just did one last weekend or 2 weeks ago. And when you first came back, you also talked about, match preparation, where you wanted to work less and it was about recovering physically. have these tapings, have they physically changed how you prep for a match because you're working so much, even though it's only like a day or two?
Yeah, because when you're wrestling a few times a week, that's your cardio. I mean, you usually we do extra cardio in the gym anyway, but even if you don't, you're out there, and especially if you're working like me, you're blowing yourself up. You know, like my moves take a lot of energy, even just to pull myself up to the top rope before I do the frog splash. It's like, okay, let me get everything I got left. And I pull myself up. I'm like, please make it to the top. Please make it to the top every time. So now if I go 4 to 6 weeks without, and then I got to wrestle, I'm like, man, I got to make sure I'm conditioned. And so I got to keep up with the cardio, and I got to do weird stuff like put chains on me or carry my heavy bag so that I'm used to like carrying weights and stuff. A lot of wrestling, anybody that's done it will tell you, you could run a marathon sometimes and still get winded wrestling because it's just so different. It's such a different explanation, if that's a real word, of your energy. And so that's a big factor right there. And then besides that, I'm usually working out around injuries. So whereas wrestling less often makes my body feel better overall, I still end up sometimes, I have good days and then I have some bad days where my back, my wrist, my shoulder, my knee hurts. Some days, those bad days still fall upon days when I got to work. And it does affect what I'm able to do. And it affects, how happy I am with my day at work, so to say. But last couple of times though, I've been feeling good. And that's awesome. Cause like I said, I've tried everything. The stem cells, a lot of people got better results than I did on those. They helped some, but I can't really brag like other people. It didn't like fix stuff, but it made some stuff better for me.
Mm.
I would probably do it again. I don't know if I'd go to South America and pay that. I don't know because I'm still still hurting, and I do, I've tried oxygen therapy, red light therapy, and I'm always like down to learn what's new. That's why I got into the CBD business, because I believe that's the key to the medicine of today and tomorrow. And everyone that's using my product is saying, you're right, it's helping me so much. So that's where we're going.
Working with Sammy Callahan too, there's a lot of backstage segments, vignettes where it's not a match, it's still physical at some point, but it started off as something silly where they said Sammy was checking Katie out backstage, and it kind of went like from there. And it's still, it's maintaining a level of silliness, but at the end of the day, you have to think, we're going to see you guys in a match, and you guys are still at the top of your respective games, intense fighters, wrestlers. So does this bridge to that sort of help you physically? And can you just talk about, just your general thoughts about where that feud is going?
It does. I mean, I like the way everything is paced, and I hope that I'll be working with Sammy for a while. I would actually be disappointed if that was just like a one-off, and then they just tossed the idea to the side, because I appreciate Sammy's work in the ring. I've watched him, and it stuck out in my mind, watching him, especially lately, just, seeing what he has to offer with his moves and with his everything. He's a great heel, and watching him, I was learning respect before he crossed my path. So now I know there's a kick-ass match between us somewhere, and I'm fine if it doesn't happen, for a couple months or whatever, or if it happens several times, I'm fine with that too. But that doesn't change the fact I'll take a day off over a day on any day.
I'm sure you get the comparisons all the time, but is he a guy that you see as like, embodying that ECW spirit? Or, do you think that's a fair comparison to make? Because ECW was one thing, and as we talked about earlier, like today's generation of wrestlers, their experience in the wrestling business is different. So do you see that? Do you think it's a fair comparison?
I think that it's fair to say that he was probably very influenced by ECW when he was coming up, when he wanted to be a wrestler. I don't know if ECW was still around when he was starting his career, but a lot of the guys in different ways, you can see how they were inspired by ECW. And I've learned that some of the guys that I never would have even guessed it, I've learned from them telling me, how much it impacted their lives and inspired them. And so, some guys like I don't even know that well, and sometimes there's no reason to even assume that they like me. I don't really talk to them that much. Then out of nowhere, they'll just one day open up, and talk about, man, I used to do all your moves when I was a kid, and my brother, and I get why they wouldn't want to or feel comfortable saying that, because that's how I was brought up. You weren't allowed to be a fan once I got into the first dressing room. I wasn't allowed to be a fan anymore or act like a fan, or Sheik and Sabu would have beat me up. But times have changed now. Whenever I do indie shows, I'm always taking pictures with the wrestlers in the dressing room, and that was the number one thing that I was told to never do way back in 1990, before I got to step into my first dressing room when the Sheik wrestled Jerry Lawler in Euclid, Ohio. Yeah. But so yeah, definitely he embodies the spirit, and what the spirit has become today.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to your longevity in the business, is that you've been able to change with it, not only with advocating marijuana, but your approach as far as what stays behind the curtain, what it should be now. And so I think that's respectable, and that's why you're seeing why
I appreciate that.
later.
Yes, sir. Longer. Yeah, we gotta get a math wizard, I guess, to count back. I started schooling in '89, had my first matches in '90, 30 years ago.
Okay, so
and actually wrestled before I got schooled in what a lot of people would count as their career, but I don't count it because I wasn't even trained yet. But me and my buddies used to open up kickboxing shows. We would set the ring up. We would open up. We would choreograph a wrestling match, and I think we were good. I've never seen a video of it, but we were doing all the flips and kicks and splits way back then. And then sometimes I'd have a kickboxing match, and then take the ring down sometimes, and that was paying my dues a couple of years before I ever even met the Sheik. But we don't count that. That helped me though, because I had to try out for the Sheik and be accepted to his school. That's the way it was back then. And then you had to get stretched and beat up to prove yourself. Now it's different. And you have to commit. You have to commit and swear yourself to a trainer back then, because if they're taking the time to train you, they don't want you going around fucking up, doing things other people are teaching you that they don't agree with. You know what I mean? And you represent their name. And there's not that many wrestlers now that represent the Sheik, saying that, hey, the Sheik taught me, he's a legend, and there's not a lot of us around. There's me and Sabu, although he had hand in taking care of a lot of other guys like Dusty Rose and Greg Valentine, but he wasn't like the only hands-on trainer with those guys, and basically I'm the only product of that, of Sabu and Sheik training me together. So it was different then.
If you had to point to a match, a few matches that you really want to represent you, can you name a couple of them?
If you want to, I'll go through my career and just pick out the top ones that really stand out as pivotal in my career, because I want to go back to, I think it was 95, could have been 96, but I'm almost positive it was 95. Rob Van Dam versus Danny Crockett at the Budokan in Tokyo. That was the first match for me that started me like on a whole new level. It was my first singles match at the Budokan, which was the really big show at the end of the tour back then. And they were giving me a chance. It was a shot at the Intercontinental title. So for me, this was a really big deal. And Crockett was so good, Danny Crockett. And he told me, kid, I'm going to make you look like $1 million. And listening to him and having him pull me through that experience, I think before that I was just doing moves and that I didn't really know where to place them, because the way that the audience reacted and the buildup of the applause going from louder to louder to louder to a big ooh, and 17,000 fans clapping with their feet in the stands, because that's how they did it. I learned so much in that one match about the storytelling and about what you're doing with their emotions, and the whole reason to even be out there in front of the crowd. And so I would recommend that. It might not be that easy to find, I don't know. And then RVD versus Bam Bam Bigelow, when I won the TV title. Excellent. And then after that, if you and of course you will love ECW, if this is your first exposure to it, check out any RVD versus Jerry Lynn match, RVD versus Sabu. I'm proud of all those matches. They're all very representative of my artistic style. So watch those. And then the crowning moment, RVD versus John Cena, ECW One Night Stand. That one pretty much says it all. And basically, if you think about it, I was fighting for everything that I stood for my whole career up till that point, because it wasn't exactly what WWE was about, and Cena was what WWE was about. So that wasn't just a match where I would be crowned the heavyweight champion. That was me fighting for everything that me and all the fans that were like-minded stood for, believed in, preferred. It was our passion versus the opposition. And so that, of course, was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
It wasn't United We Stand, because that was your return match, but you've had some really, really great matches. I think it was your second match with Willie Mack, because you worked with him at PCW a couple of years ago. So I want to throw in the Impact match with Willie Mack. That's a really good one. So
thank you.
I
enjoyed that.
Definitely a good variety of matches people can check out.
And not too many stinkers to put up against all those great matches.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I remember years ago, this is probably 93, and there was a discussion with some wrestling promoters in Georgia. Ben Masters from Peach State Wrestling was saying, I was talking to Greg Price, and he said, who do you think is the best worker, Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels? Because at that time, that was, probably definitely the top tier. And regardless, what stuck out in my mind was he said, I'm not even sure which guy he went with. I think he went with Bret, but either way, he said that what it boiled down to in his mind was consistency. And that always stuck out in my mind. And you're right. You have to be consistent. And for me, if I wanted to consistently have matches where I didn't fuck up, eventually I learned to cut out some of the moves that are really impressive but are a little bit too much risk to know 100% that I'm going to pull it off every time. I used to run and jump to the top rope in the middle. I still don't see anybody doing that, and spring back off of it. You can find me on video doing everything that everyone does nowadays, with very little exception. Even if they are getting credit for being the first to do it, the RVD fans, I think, no. But part of being consistent to me did mean, cutting the risk down and doing what I was best at and what I for sure could get in. Sometimes a little risk is worth it. If you think it'll pay off. But if there was something where, I slip on it every once in a while, or this move is really good sometimes, but not good unless if I don't do something right, boom, throw it out. That's what a lot of guys still need to do their first several years in wrestling, because but now, it's so impressive that you don't see guys screw up very much. They'll do a flip on the top rope, land on the rope, do another flip. Some of the stuff is such a stretch from what I came up in that I don't agree with it. So that's why it's cool to say that you think I've adapted well, because in my mind, a lot of times I'm so old school that when I watch it, I catch myself saying, that wouldn't have worked back in the day. And he's got his right arm, because we worked the whole left arm my whole career, and now they don't even care. And it's like, there's a lot of things, where they work together, where back in the day, hey, if you're protecting the business, you're not going to do that because everyone sees what you're doing. But I guess if you say I've adapted, I guess I have. I'm still around.
There you go. You're top of your game. You have a good selection of matches to go on, and we can see you in the near future on Impact Wrestling on Access every week. And everybody should check out Celebrity Slots, the RVD slot machine. Rob
Free to
Van Dam, thanks
play.
very much for your time.
Right on, dude. Watch Headstrong on Amazon and go to rvdcbd.com and get what you know works the best. Appreciate it, dude. See you, Rob Van Dam. Want one of
There we
those?
go.